Welcome back to the Battle of Laurel Hill. So I took my corps that came out of Saunders Farm or the full corps that came out of Saunders Farm, and pulled out some of the units that were below 1,000 men and grabbed a couple extra units, dump in there. Then took everything back up to 1,600, swapped some weapons around again, using just 1861s, Harper's Ferries, and 1863s. And then I swapped in some more artillery. It's pretty close to what I had in this corps going into Saunders Farm, but a few extra snipers. Took the 24 pounders up to 14 guns. That's as high as I'm going to go. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot to do. I am bringing these 2-star snipers in because there's a spot on the left flank where with scoped rifles and without the extra range bonus they'll do alright. So I'm going to try and farm these guys up to 3-star before Cold Harbor. Other than that, the latest career point went into training. And we're going to be outnumbered about 2 to 1. With the extra units we're going to have. The goal is going to be have just enough infantry in place to hold these fortifications. Preferably the allied troops are going to do most of that. And then get snipers onto the flanks and just start annihilating the infantry that piles up in front of the fortifications. 324 pounders are coming in to help thin those numbers out, and then the last set of reinforcements will be the counter battery units, and those will help me clear out the large mass of Union artillery that's sitting in the fields. Okay, and we'll get going. So my initial setup is going to be very heavy on the snipers and artillery. You have enough infantry to start off with that you don't really need too much more. We'll get a bunch in the second wave. So I want 3 skirmisher units because there's 3 different places I want to have their fire to start off with. And then I have the 1 infantry unit that will go down and cover for down south where we don't have a full unit. You don't need too much in the north most of the time. You've got 2 units of Napoleons and 2 units of 10-pound I can't talk. 10-pound ordnance and 1 unit of Napoleons. I'm dumping the skirmishers into the fortifications because they're going to take a little bit less damage than the infantry do. And then spreading my line to the right until I can get another unit down there. 1 sniper goes in the middle, 1 goes to the right, and 1 goes to the north. The 24 pounder goes, 1 of them goes down right behind the flag because that's where a lot of the charges come initially, and then I'll put another one on top of the other hill. So my goal for this battle is more or less to defend in place, take out all the artillery, and then we'll slowly go in and wipe everything out from there. You do have extra time in this battle. You do not need. I think if you have your 2 victory points and don't take the field, then after finish pops up, you can go until at least 220. I don't know when the actual end timer is. That's when I finish wiping everything out. We're getting lucky. The artillery's coming up, so we get some free shots on it. A lot of the damage in this battle is going to come from the enemy artillery. So whenever we can get rid of that, we will. Attempting to drop the fortification and grab it again to see if I can stop charges. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have to move the snipers out of there because that infantry unit wants to walk right through there. And then when infantry gets into range, then I swap out the skirmishers and throw the infantry unit back into the fortifications. And this is why I wanted to bring that 2-star unit, because they can just sit there and it's going to be able to rack up kills all day long. I'd like to go after the infantry with my snipers right, but I really need to... I really need to deal with this infantry problem, and then I can go after the artillery. I am a little light on infantry, so if my line does get cracked at some point, I'm going to have some trouble. So if you're less sure about this, you can drop one of the sniper units and have a second infantry unit or some more 24-pounders or something. So if we got charged down here, the 2 skirmisher units will do alright, and we'll get the infantry unit in behind it. I'll have to replace those soon, but we'll let the artillery shoot it, not my unit, for as long as possible. I really try and keep the allied units in the fortifications, because they're going to be visible to the artillery, and you're just going to get hit for most of the battle. So the longer you can keep them in there, the less casualties you're going to end up taking. This battle is definitely one of the cases where the extra damage from the fixed perks and from the fixed size curves really starts to get noticeable. The allied units don't last nearly as long as they would in the base game, and I'm able to deal more damage to the enemy infantry faster than I normally would be able to. Though we are in pretty good shape for a change. Our infantry is basically the same size as theirs, which is fairly unusual. I wasn't able to try out scaling at all in this battle. Don't know what you'd have to do it. But that means we get to fight an even playing field for a change. Well, at least in size, if not in quantity. So, can't quite get the snipers around on the corner yet, but pretty soon. And now I notice that a bunch of units are starting to pile up in that corner, and they don't often do that. I'm not sure what caused it this time. Often they'll go back more towards the center, but I'm going to have to start bringing some more units around up there to deal with that. But those units up there tend to be oddly hesitant, so it's not too big a deal. You don't usually get overrun by them. There are a bunch of supply wagons sitting around, but they're kind of hard to get to. There's a lot of units on the field, so we just aren't going to be able to capture them like we normally would, just because there's a whole second defensive line around the camp. So this is the point where I'm starting to feel the lack of reinforcement of the extra unit, but we just finally got our guys coming in, so we can bring these in and start shoring up our lines. Because of the extra units, let's say don't do it then. So just put some extra units in the middle, bring more down south. Yeah, I decide that I only need the skirmishers up there. So, which is good timing, because now I'm kind of in trouble down here. I really don't have enough coverage. I probably should have pulled the unit in the southernmost fortification at the northern victory point and hit that unit in the flank, because now I'm going to lose that, and now I have to try and get my artillery out of there. The good news is that infantry unit is wavering, so it's only firing sporadically. Actually, what I should have done right now is I should have moved Lee between the 24-pounders and that unit, and then that 24-pounder unit wouldn't be able to be fired at all. Not sure what happened to the melee down there. The other unit just didn't break, but didn't go anywhere either, so I decided to charge my infantry into it. So, take a few losses on 24-pounders, but not too bad. And then as soon as I get that unit to rout, I just hop back into the fortification instead of trying to pursue them. So I have to run those infantry units over there to try and take the line back. This is not a great scenario, but there's not too much. Like, there's that infantry unit there, and there's that skirmisher unit there, and then the other units decided to go north, which is actually really good for me. If all 4 of those units had come down, that would have been harder to get that line back. But you can see the massive amounts of infantry starting to stack up, but we've got a lot of artillery in place, so we should be able to beat them back. And all the allied units are equipped with CS Richmonds. Yeah. So their melee value is actually pretty good in relation to the Union units, so they hold pretty well in the fortifications. These fortifications are all, I think, about as good as they get. You're probably still doing less damage than you would be standing in the open, or I guess in the trees, but you get so much resistance. You're going to get hit by so many units and so much artillery that it's well worth using in this case. So I have to spin him to try and deal with that unit. He's about to get hit from 3 sides, so it'll be alright, but I'm going to take some flanking fire while we do it. Unfortunately, that wavers my unit. Pulling some skirmishers, get some more units on the flank. Still a little short-handed and recovering from that setback in the middle. But we seem to be holding pretty well in the north, holding fine in the middle. And we just I throw the detached skirmishers into the fortifications to block enemy fire. And then I can get my other infantry units up behind it and fire into melee. Really want to get rid of these skirmishers if I can. They have JF Browns in this battle, so they're able to hit my infantry without me being able to hit back. So, mostly re-solidified the line there. Still a lot up north, but our skirmish units in the fortifications are doing well enough that we're doing alright, especially with the sniper support. And we got these new unit of snipers. I decided to pull them out of the middle just because I was having trouble fitting them in places where they could hit. Like, it'd be really nice to be able to shoot into, like, to the north and the south there, but units keep wandering through there, so I decided to pull them all the way around. And I really want a second unit to be able to hit the artillery on the right, so getting a little worried up there, so I pull some more detached skirmishers to go up. And those skirmishers arrive just in time, so now I'll be able to start pushing their line up, and then I won't need quite as much on this end anymore. I'm able to get the AI units back into the fortifications. But as much as I'd like to, I can see multiple enemy guns. As much as I'd like to be able to have counter battery units hitting those, it's more important is to break the infantry attack. Once those are broken and they're not really doing any damage and they're pushed back, then the battle's basically over. So you just have to eat the artillery fire for a little while, but once we break those up, we'll be fine. So detached skirmishers arrive just in time, because that unit's almost done up there. But now we've got units firing on their flank. 5.3 rifle could move into the center to try and hit some of that, but it tends to get really overexposed and hit from multiple directions, so it's not worth moving them over. It'd be nice to get the 24 pounders a little closer, but if you do that, you're going to take a lot of collateral damage. We've already taken some decent losses, so just letting them do the shell shot range. Worry about the cavalry starting to come in, so we're going to pull some units over. But my unit in the fortifications decides to target it and routes it, so don't have to worry about it. And now we got any more reinforcements. So Middle's still doing fine, or more or less. I think I bring one more unit up just because I'm a little worried about how much is stacked up there. But got my first counter battery artillery and another 24 pounder. So once I get those up there, this line is gonna hold, and then it's just clean up. So at this point I know I have enough units there that I can get on the flank some more, and then I'm going to move the snipers up to go after the artillery. Just returning my detached skirmishers to their units because they're starting to get small. And there's not much cavalry or anything over here, or the units that have closer targets, so they don't go after the supply wagon, so I can bring it up around and use it to refill the ammunition on the snipers. Cavalry is conveniently charging into the skirmishers. I haven't seen the AI dedicate so many units up north, but it's actually kind of good because they charge into those skirmishers and just get destroyed. They do very little damage to the unit in the fortifications, so no worries of those units breaking. And so that detached skirmisher took all the artillery fire in the flank and then ran pretty much as expected. That unit's getting, 5th South Carolina is getting real small, so just prepping a unit to take its place. I want to use them as long as possible, but you don't want to leave the line open when they do finally go down. But you can see a lot of these units are already starting to get real small, since they didn't. This isn't like Saunders Farm where they all are 2,000 plus brigades. They're only starting at like 1,700 or smaller, so give them some time getting fired at by good weapons with experienced troops and 24 pounders shooting away at them, and their sizes get pretty small, and then once they get that small, even when they come forward again, they just don't have the firepower to knock any of the units out of the fortifications. So I'm trying to get some more vision on the artillery. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a vision black hole in there. I needed to have brought a detached skirmisher around the side more, and then I would have been able to see them. So finally got my counter battery artillery in, so I can start working on those units. So up by that detached skirmisher is where I should start. So I started moving because I want to go capture that. That supply wagon's already empty, just because the sheer amount of artillery is there. Not much I can do about that. No way I was going to reasonably capture those. I think they're only 5k at this battle. So I switched that infantry unit out, just because that's I think close to the most losses I'm going to take on any unit in this battle. It's higher than I like to see, but needed to hold the position, so we'll be able to keep swapping out units from now on. And you can see we've started to already wrap the right flank, and up north I'm sending units to reinforce, but nothing is really happening up there. They're never going to push through that. You can lose the southern victory point off and on as much as you want, it doesn't matter. Probably get it back before finish pops up, but you can see my snipers are exposed, but that's fine because there's other units that are closer to any potential artillery, so they're not going to get targeted. So because there's no units on the right anymore, I'm shifting the 24 pounders over, and you can see I tried to move farther forward with the snipers, and discovered that vision black hole. And considering how much artillery is sitting up there, that could have been a lot worse. I'm lucky that when that unit started wavering, it was hidden, because otherwise it would have been standing there. I wouldn't have been able to control it, and it would have, if not canister, it would have taken almost point blank shell shot, and I probably would have lost 100 snipers right there. So I get real lucky there. I should have waited until that detached skirmisher unit went up and around. But yeah, I was just busy being super aggressive, running in fortifications over and over and getting wiped out. So when that center unit went, it meant the next available target was the south fortification, and that south fortification is flanked pretty easily, so that would just cause the extra unit to rout. But I had that 9-3 as a replacement, so he's able to hop right back in, and nothing changes. I could possibly have moved up another unit, or what really would have been good at this point, retrospect, if I'd had another sniper unit that I could put where the 5.3 rifle skirmishers are in the middle there, that would have been pretty good. But snipers are busy with what they need to do, and I didn't want to skimp on infantry quite that much, which is probably good because I wouldn't have been able to put one up north if I had one less. Or I would have had to throw one of the units that's already taken as many casualties as I really wanted to take back into the line. I think that was a ghost cav, but, well, he was small enough by the time he tried it, he was dead. So we're slowly starting to work on the artillery. Most of the infantry forces are starting to fall apart. 6-1's taken a lot of losses, so we're going to get 11-2 in there. Swap them out again. And around this time is when I start thinking about swinging some of the infantry around to start flanking that position. But there's still a lot of artillery up there, so don't want to hurry that part too much. So just swapping that unit out, getting 7-1 some experience. And I realized at this point that my artillery decided to do something weird. So sometimes when you issue attack orders with artillery, they either decide to, they don't limber properly, or they limber and then never come out of it, but are constantly counted as moving. And so now all of my artillery is exhausted, even though it should not be and hasn't really done anything. It just walked across the river. I finally got them actually firing. The way you break them out of that is you basically just give a right-click angle order, and then that fixes the problem. I think you can just issue a move order right in front of them, and that'll do it too. But that's a little frustrating. It's going to make moving those around harder. But not much you can do about it. Sometimes it happens. Unless you notice the animation glitch. So, just coming up to start putting some flanking fire in there. North is almost done. Centers start getting close. South is almost falling apart except for the artillery. So, because there's not much north anymore, I shift my unit over, and then I start bringing the allied unit that's basically intact up there down and around, so he can sit in the trenches and start taking losses and absorbing the fire. And now I decide to think the infantry attack is broken enough. I can start pulling units and bringing them around to get behind the enemy lines and flank the camp. There's also a good chunk of artillery sitting right around that observation point. That's really hard to see unless you get behind them. So that's a lot of the reason part of the reason I flank the camp is to get rid of the artillery. Part of it is that's the process to, wiping out the enemy entirely. I guess there's an argument to be made that I should be taking those South Carolina units out and putting more of my units in so that I can and get more of the kills at this point. Hard to say if that's worth it or not. So at this point they're blocked, so we need to go out and around and get into the next field. Key part to most of this is if you can get rid of the skirmishers on this side, then you have pretty much free reign to move your snipers around. If there's skirmishers or cavalry left, then doing that's pretty dangerous. So there's no more infantry that's free down here, so I'm just starting to move stuff up. Bring the 24 pounders over, sending that fresh unit. That was probably a mistake. I shouldn't have attack moved, because when you attack move, it tries to target to the center of the unit as opposed to like the edges. If I just sort of moved them into position and let them fire, I probably would have been better off. Or I should have come down with those skirmishers. I would have taken the volley or two there. You also do need to be careful. This is one of the places where height in the game does matter a bit. The artillery behind the southern victory point will have trouble firing, hitting targets up where this artillery cluster is. So you got to be real careful when you attack click that they don't try and walk forward onto the ridge. At this point it's pretty safe. There's not a whole lot left. But if you do it too early on, it'll be real sad. So I didn't realize there was a skirmish unit left there, walked forward, took a volley in the face with my snipers. And so I'm going to bring these units up. So all those units are going south to try and fill the area, left by all the units that are dead, and that gives me the left flank. And I'm running out of targets again. I don't want to spend my time firing at this unit with fortifications. So just sliding around the board edge in the convenient swamp. Swamps are really bad for moving, but they do give you more cover than open ground. So you can slide snipers into those and, you know, get places you normally wouldn't be able to. And the infantry I assigned down there is still kind of sitting there. I really don't want to go around that on the right until I've gotten rid of as much artillery as possible. Moved Haskell forward so he does more damage, and because I'm slowly going to work on getting him killed off. But you can see almost nothing is left down here anymore. And the units are shattering up here. Another question would be if I should have targeted some of the officers earlier. Would have had to wait until I had 20 pounders on the field. I think I'd still target the artillery first. You know, in some ways I want the infantry coming in. Like anytime the infantry comes in, they're just going to have a horrible exchange because they're in the open versus units in the, you know, some of the best fortifications in the game. So I think going after the artillery was the right call there. So, just moving the skirmishers up some more. And now I'm going to finally send those up. I've got as much as the artillery as I can reasonably hit. And then I'm going to try and break that infantry unit. Getting sight on some more, so targeting all the counter battery. The more of those units I can get rid of, the fewer casualties I'll take once I have to walk through there. And there's still 4 or 5 units sitting in there, so. Sliding over, hopefully I can get the flank shot. see there the 24 pounders. Shouldn't have clicked them in the first place, but they were having to move up and over the ridge to even get a line of sight. So we break that unit. Now we can walk straight into the artillery. Probably going to take some fire doing that, but we'll see what we can do with the snipers beforehand. Yeah, the AR must be set to some relatively aggressive setting if it's still coming forward with units that small. Oh, good for us. That artillery unit keeps dropping in and out of sight. I'm not sure from what. So that one takes a little while to get rid of. I'm not sure why that supply wagon doesn't just retreat off the map like the other ones did. Or actually, no, it's probably going off the map right now. Wasn't paying attention to it. We'll see what happens when I unpause. If I still have vision over there. But I think it's empty, I think, so it's just heading off the map now. Yep, there it goes. I wish I could figure out how to make that apply to units other than supply wagons. If you could actually have the AI units retreat off the map, there'd be some interesting game balance things you could do with that. So, got through the first wave of artillery. Still more to go after. Trying to get rid of those skirmishers. Yeah, you can see the artillery unit just dropping in and out. I don't want to go too far left because I'm going to run into that next unit in the fortified building. So I want to wait a little longer before I start taking fire from him. Just sending my allied units up to go find that artillery piece and get rid of it. Turns out there's a skirmisher unit hiding in there, so he's going to be annoying. But now you can finally see some of the extra artillery that's hiding in there. But once we get rid of that, there's basically nothing left but units sitting in fortifications, and the rest of the battle is just a wrap-up. You could possibly, if more of the artillery moves to the north or the center, you could probably bring the infantry around behind sooner and then just try and move snipers forward to try and get vision on this. Oh, there's the ever fun artillery charge. Not sure why it decided to do that, but brought it into very convenient rifle range. So now I'm going to start moving the artillery up because what artillery that's left isn't going to be firing at me anymore. So again, I want to make sure I don't trip the flag, because if I trip the flag, then I only have 25 minutes left, as opposed to if I leave it as is, then I get plenty of extra time. Take some extra fire from 11-2 there, because I'm not paying enough attention. But I decided to move up and push these units out. So I think there's just a skirmisher unit in there. Infantry has done its job mostly. It just needs to sit there and let the snipers work now. Turns out there's a cannon unit in there. and the infantry unit doesn't fully retreat, so I can't target it, so I'm going to take some extra losses. 11-1 is about to rout. So that plan didn't work quite as well as I thought, because I could not see the units that were hiding under there, otherwise I wouldn't have done that. Then I don't quite have the 24 pounders lined up or anything, so thankfully the Cooper is busy milling around rather than just reloading and putting canister into us. So there's one decent sized unit. Oh, he came out of the fortifications actually. It does sort of seem like once the AI is out of the fortifications, then it sort of becomes a free unit. It can move around again. Maybe it just goes back to the fortifications if it can't see any targets, but so almost got the artillery down. Just double checking the victory conditions in case I have to walk forward and grab the flag quick. So that unit routing through there is kind of unfortunate. I'm going to have to spend some time chasing him down, but once Mink's down, I think that's it. Lose an entire detached skirmisher unit because I was just trying to return it and wasn't paying attention to where it was returning to. This would go a little faster, but I'm basically out of supply. I think Wagner has a little bit left, but I'm keeping him for refilling snipers. Yeah, I think he's only got like 1,000 left, so he wouldn't do much if I moved him to my artillery. But that's fine. Now we have plenty of time, and the artillery did its job, so move it back up. Get him into a more optimal range to deal damage, and then we'll just start sliding everything up. Thankfully that flag is the capture radius is pretty small, so we don't have to give it a huge berth like we had to at Cemetery Ridge or at Shiloh. I'm in no rush in the center here because I kind of want these units to get killed off, so just moving everything up while I let the artillery work. So I move the general because I don't remember if it blocks my infantry. I think it does, and I think my not sure if I think the artillery actually blocked 7-1 rifle as well, because it wasn't until cable started flashing showing that he was in melee that unit actually fired. So I needed to adjust that if I wanted 7-1 to be able to support the melee. Actually, this would be a good time to probably charge into melee. So there's no supporting fire. I would have just been able to farm that stat a little bit. But was more thinking about just not taking any more casualties. So, almost got that unit pinned. They'll be gone soon. And then we'll have them completely blocked in the east. We'll just need to slide some units over to do it on the west. Taking it slow, moving up all the artillery. Sort of a consistent theme in the last few battles, but, well, it's effective. If I pushed, I could push harder with the infantry, but it just means more time getting fired at, so. So at this point, I didn't realize my northwest rifle unit was in range of that fortification. I'm going to take a couple volleys before I notice. Go for the capture in the north. Don't get it. Finally notice that I've lost, 150 men out of that unit. And start pulling back, because I don't want, because I'm going to start hitting them from the east, and so I don't want anything sneaking into the western corner. So starting to put a line of units there. You see, they're still coming right back out after you. If that isn't the suicidal AI setting, it's close. So, they see the supply wagon, try and go after it, get hit in the flank. So at this point, I don't know for sure when the end timer is, but I'm also not too worried about it. If the battle ends right here, I'm fine. Pretty good result. Wouldn't have gotten quite everyone, but more than acceptable. So just playing it slow, not taking any more losses than I really need to. I decided to pull the snipers around because I don't want to walk them into the trees, and I think that force is pretty much finished, so I can afford to just put them into the open. Yeah, looks like almost everything's clear, so I can move up that entire line. And then they won't have any more cover to hide in. Again, should have moved the skirmishers first there, and then moved the infantry. Went to taking a volley. So, just leading with the allied units to take any fire as I move up my line. And now I start thinking about, can I get a charge in at some point to get some surrenders? So I sort of start closing the line on the left. I throw a bunch of stuff in there. Moving that in, unfortunately, I think is going to drive stuff to the west and sort of delay things a little bit. But pull back the snipers. They've got all the kills they need. Unsurprisingly, they break out to that side, but they don't have too far to go. So, one unit's gone. And both of those units have so little morale, they aren't doing anything anyways. So, just order a mass charge. And one surrender. Second surrender. Okay. So that is under 10,000 kills, yeah, 10,000 losses, including allied troops, which means I end up losing about 5,000 of my own men, and so about 4,000 after medicine. So that is a excellent result for this battle. I think it's possible to do even better. I saw several mistakes, so I probably could have gotten away with maybe 1,000 less. Yeah, pretty good results across the board. That new sniper unit did really well. one 24-pounder just had a field day. I think that was the northern one. Didn't have to move at all, just had infinite targets. And, some decent losses on some of those troops, but we got most of those onto the Allied troops, so didn't lose too much. Even the 10-pound parrots that were terrible did really well. As you can see, almost all of my losses, or most of my losses, are from the artillery, as expected. A few infantry units in there, but those numbers are starting to become more reasonable. And then a bunch of infantry units that walked forward, fired a couple times at a fortification, did nothing. Didn't lose any officers. Got a couple more promotions. We got a couple more lieutenant generals if we need to swap something out. Bunch of 24-pounders, a bunch more 1863s, some more Spencers. Apparently there's some lots in the field for some reason. More 1861s, which is useful. 147 JF Browns, more 20-pound parrots. I'll probably end up going to sell the JF Browns. Maybe we'll get some more and have enough to equip a unit with. Whitworth TS is way better, but scope rifles are scope rifles. And enough Richmonds will be able to assign a unit, set up a unit with them. So yeah, we got the full prisoner amount. So we came out of that with, 6k more men than when we went into that battle. We got 45,000 kills, so it's probably, 1 to 5? No, a little more than 1 to 4, if we're including the allied forces we lost. Values went up a little bit, even though we killed more than they got reinforcement. But we're only looking at 26k for day 1, which is pretty good shape. And we're sitting here with 500,000 in cash and nearly 30,000 in recruits, and we've got about 62k men in our current army. Lots of good stat gain, and a lot of these units are still in pretty good shape. Max the stats out on him, and if we dump a max, maybe we might. I think if we dump like Lee or Jackson in there, we'll get the 3-star. Even if we don't, we'll definitely have it by the end of Cold Harbor. Heck, we'd have it by day 2 of Cold Harbor, probably. These guys did well as expected, even with that unit taking some extra losses and having to pull back. So we can dump some lower ranking officers in there, probably. Yeah, just taking a look at the stats, doing pretty well across the board. So yeah, very low losses overall for that sort of battle, and very well set up for going into Cold Harbor. For Cold Harbor, I will almost certainly be going for a full 3-day, just to show more of the battle and see how many more we can kill. We'll be at 8 training for that. So I'll see what there is to do with that battle, and I'll be back soon with that. Thanks for watching.